Greetings. In this series, you will find my summary and commentary on the book Lies My Teacher Told Me, Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong. It should not be construed that this is a replacement for the book. In fact, I will hit this all at a very high level that is easily sort of encapsulated in a short video. But if you want the real information, you should go buy the book. It is an economical read, to be sure. It's available for 1 cent on the Amazon Marketplace plus shipping, so you can certainly have a copy of your own without any great hoodoo. From a philosophical and personal standpoint, I kind of take issue with the phrase "lies my teacher told me." First of all, it's not the teacher's fault if the history is sort of whitewashed, which is basically what this book boils down to, is the idea that maybe we're not going to talk about all the blatant womanizing that goes on, with our forefathers. We're just going to kind of keep it simple. But I suspect that to a certain extent this was done as a marketing thing. Factual omissions, my teacher told me, or failed to tell me, I guess, in the case of omissions, doesn't really sell as well. So we have to sort of pump things up a bit. So at the heart of chapter 1, there is this concept of why would we want to promulgate these lies in the first place? And the two big points that came to me out of it were, number one, we don't want to tell our kids all the terrible things that their heroes did, because God forbid they actually go and do them themselves. While kids are going to do it anyway, it's just, I think the premise is that we don't want to start them out as indicating these are great men, you should be like this, and you can be great too. Just go find some terrible thing to do. The second item was more interesting in that the author indicated there's sort of a taboo on the concept of social class, that we don't want to admit to our kids, essentially, that your birth makes a big difference. If you're born and you come from a family that has a lot of money, that makes a big difference as to what it is you can accomplish in life. And if we admitted to our kids all the times in which, so-and-so was really successful because they came from a rich background, then I think it would be much less inspirational, and it would give kids less to sort of yearn for, to push towards. So the author in chapter 1 points out 3 examples. I'm not sure if these are his best examples or merely ones that came to mind of history sort of painted with a white and broad brush. The first was Helen Keller. As I'm sure you know, she was born deaf and blind, and despite that, she managed to overcome overcome her physical disadvantages, became a college educated, a productive member of society. That's great. Probably I should have verified this before I started recording, but I suspect that at least in some part she was well off, per previous point in section 1. What is not said is that later in life she actually became a fairly severe socialist. She spoke out in favor of the Russian Revolution, and this came because of her advocacy for the blind. She started out just sort of wanting to help people like her, and found quickly that a lot of the people like her were like her because they were taken advantage of in factories and in unsafe working conditions, and ended up being stricken blind because their factory didn't care about them enough to give them safety car or whatever the analog was of the day of proper OSHA conditions to assure that people weren't going to become terribly injured. So from there, she sort of turned to realize that this isn't about that her case was not the standard one, that typically people who end up in her condition ended up there because of socio-economic reasons, that they had to work in some terrible conditions. And so that kind of turned her toward the idea of socialism. And she, as I said, she supported the Russian Revolution, and this really sort of earned her some negative credit, if you will, in in the popular press. On one hand, they really admired the way that she had managed to pull herself up from her terrible initial conditions, but at the same time, they also sort of derided her as this naive little girl who, she believes in socialism, and so must be because someone's telling her. It's very condescending, the way the author phrases it, which is personally irritating. The next person that the author picks on is Woodrow Wilson, our 28th president. He's credited largely with creating the League of Nations and ushering in the era of women's suffrage, but everyone seems to forget that he was a proponent of the Ku Klux Klan and was a profound racist. Interfered in the political affairs of neighboring countries, sent troops to Russia even to prolong the Russian Revolution, and could have built up a lot of enmity with the Russians that sort of helped to complicate the Cold War. So he was far from the benevolent person that was portrayed by history. So while he's interfering in Nicaraguan elections to strong arm their leaders into passing legislation that is beneficial to the U.S., he's also jailing people for years under the guise of the Sedition Act. So just doesn't strike one as a particularly positive person when you take into account his entire body of work. And the last example that the author gets is poor Betsy Ross. As a kid, I grew up with the happy revolutionary songs about Betsy Ross and the first flag, and the author points out there's nothing whatsoever to substantiate that Betsy Ross had anything to do with anything, least of all the creation of the first American flag. So from the author's examples, we have two whitewashings and one just pure invention. Ross's family is reported to have contrived the story 100 years after the events, just to sort of provide keep forgetting to switch slides, just to provide a tourist attraction so that people would have a good story to tell. So that is sad. And so while I think the author gets off to a pretty roaring start, I am left with a bit of doubt in my mind. I've kind of tried to quickly ascertain that the level to which what their author has to say is true, completely on the up and up, and how much of it is just sort of marketing bluster, if you will. And for the most part, I think that the spirit of what the author has to say is reasonably accurate, but you have to wonder how much he's puffed this up for the opportunity of sales. So at any rate, that's chapter 1. I will continue at some point in the future with chapter 2, and we shall see what we shall see. Until next time, happy whatever you're doing.